Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Shane Flint Outdoors. Today I thought I'd do something different, and instead of showing you a fishing video this week, I thought I'd talk to you about some of the techniques and lures that I've been using over the last few weeks that have been very successful in helping me catch quite a few bass. You know, it's turned as mid-August, I think it's 22 August today, and the fishing is pretty tough now this time of the year in the heat of the summer. You know, it's hot outside, the water temperature's up. It tends to drive the fish down deeper. The bait fish go deeper, which drives the bass deeper. And so you have to change up your techniques to be successful catching bass, especially consistently. Well, I've been lucky the last few weeks, and what I thought I'd do is show some of the baits that I have been fishing that's helped me, and locations, and that's why I have a whiteboard here, the locations of where I've been casting and finding fish pretty consistently over the last couple weeks. You know, this pattern will probably last at least another 2 or 3 weeks, depending on where you live at. Here in Virginia, probably till mid-September or a little bit later, and then probably down further south even longer. So these are techniques you could probably use for the next few weeks or longer and be pretty successful until the water starts to fall churn, where the water turns over and gets cooler and the bass get more aggressive and start biting in different patterns. But the 3 things I'll talk to you today about are the drop shot, which I've been pretty successful with, Carolina rig, and I'll show you how I rig my Carolina rig. You've probably seen one. And then the one thing that I'm still catching fish on just a little bit differently is the Kitech Easy Shiner, and show you how I've been rigging that and some of the techniques I've been fishing with that. And I'll start with the Kitech. So typically when I usually throw my Kitech, I usually throw it on a jig head with an open hook, which is the way I have this one rigged right here right now. But lately I have switched to a 5-inch Kitech, and what I've done is I went to the bigger Kitech, and this is the Copperfield color, which is a pretty good color. I went to the screw in hook into the nose, screw into the nose of the hook with a weighted hook. I like the belly weighted hooks, and you know, kind of Texas rigged that right there and been fishing it like this around the weeds and the moss at about that 7-8 foot mark. When the kind of early is when I've been catching bass on this, around that 7 to 8 foot depth around mossy areas. And I'll kind of point that out on my whiteboard here in just a second. But this has been pretty successful. Caught quite a few fish on this, fishing the mossy points for bass. And the bigger Kitech, the Kitech Easy Shiner is just a pretty good bait. You know, my only complaint about it is it's not very durable, but it's got a lot of good action, so I've been sticking to it and been catching a lot of fish on it. I had it in the jig head style the other day because I was fishing around some rocks and caught a couple on it, but this is what I've been fishing with the last few weeks in this style, rigged up this way with the screw-in hook, and it's been pretty good lure, especially early around the mossy areas. Not so much when it gets a little later and the fish go deeper. And the other thing that I've been fishing really successful the last few weeks is the drop shot. And I'm reaching down here and get my drop shot that I have set up, and I have been fishing a finesse worm, which I have on here. And here's how I rig my drop shot. You know, I got the drop shot hook. I like a red hook, just my preference. And then about 12-14 inches below, I have the regular, you know, your typical drop shot sinker on there. Now I rig my finesse worm a little bit differently than most. I don't hook it. See, a lot of people do this. A lot of people just hook it like that, straight through. I don't do that. My preference is I just run it, the head, onto the first part of the shank, and you can just barely feel the point of the hook through the rubber. It gives it a little bit less, it catches less weeds that way. And you can go to a weedless drop shot hook. They make them. I've got some right here. They got a little plastic barb on them. I like this. It's my preference. The other ones work okay. They're going to catch weeds. Nothing's perfectly weedless, but this it keeps it from getting snagged a little bit. You know, helps a little bit with snags and definitely around the moss. So this is the setup I've been fishing. I like this color. Been doing real good on this color. It's called it's a purple. It's purple with blue fleck. I call it strawberry jam with blue fleck, and it's a cut tail, and I think I got these at Bass Pro Shop. It's just a 6-inch little finesse worm. Looks really good. Now, what I will tell you, I just did last fishing trip. I caught a bass and lost my worm, and I have all these Kitechs laying around on the boat that are tore up that won't stay on the jig head. So what I did is like, why don't I just do this right here? So I rigged me a Kitech like that. So this one's all beat up, you know, but it's never been hooked that way. And I drop shotted the Kitech that way, and it worked. I caught 2 bass just bam bam on it with this setup. It works. You can fish anything on a drop shot, right? It's just making sure you get it down in that presentation, and you don't have to fish this, you know, you don't have to a lot of action. You know, I get it to the bottom and I just, you know, dance it around, if you will, then drag it and dance it, and usually about the second time I, you know, move it is usually when I get the bite. I noticed the bigger bass. I caught one that's 311 the other day, and another one is right at 211 or something, 213. The bigger bass tend to just swim off with the bait versus tap it. The last few trips that I've been out, but you know, that's just, you never can tell. You know, you always want to set the hook. When in doubt, set the hook. But I've been watching my line a lot, and I've noticed the line moving on the drop shot. It gives me a good indicator when I got a bite. But that's my drop shot setup, and I've been fishing this at that 10-12 foot mark, maybe a little bit deeper depending on where I'm at. And I'll kind of show you the areas that I got drawn out here on the whiteboard in just a second. But that's, you know, the Kitech I've only used a couple times, like I said, but I really like to use that finesse worm, which I'm going to rig back up and have it ready for next time. And I mean, you can rig this any way you'd like. That's just my technique of, you know, hooking it in the head like that on the point of the hook. Works really good. Last 3 or 4 weeks, I caught quite a few fish on the drop shot, and you'll be seeing those in videos coming out really soon. And then the last setup I want to talk about is my Carolina rig. And this is my Carolina rig, and I use a 3-way swivel. I think you can see that. And I tie just a regular egg sinker on the bottom, and then a 12 to 18 inch leader. And this is on 15-pound fluorocarbon or copolymer, Yozuri copolymer, which is, you know, same as pretty clear stuff. And I've got a Kitech, I think this is called a Fun Bug. Got them right here. Hold on, I'll tell you what it's called. Thought I had them. Oh, right here. These are called a Crazy Flapper. When I was buying some easy shiners, I was like, well, let me try their creature bait. And this is pumpkin with chartreuse bottom. Really good. Caught some good bass on this the other day, and I'll get it out in a video. And I was fishing this down 14 to 20 foot of water. And that's where I was fishing this Carolina rig. And I drag the Carolina rig. I'll throw it as far as I can throw it, and sometimes I'll let slack out or drift and put out more line and just slowly bump it and drag it. I want to keep the sinker contact in the bottom at all times, and you'll feel the bite. When they hit it, you'll feel it. You want to set the hook. And I fish this on a bait caster. Like I said, 15-pound test line. This is a 7'2" medium heavy action Daiwa reel with Daiwa Tatula reel, which I really like the Tatula. And this is actually a matching Daiwa Tatula rod to this setup. This is a matching set. You know, you want to have a good stiff backbone, because that is a meaty, and this is Texas rigged. This is a meaty bait, and you want to be able to get the hook set really good when you finally get that bite. So you want a good rod with a good backbone. The longer, probably the better. 7'6" maybe even be a little bit better for this type of outfit. But 7 foot, 6'6" works just fine. Just depends personal preference as well. Another way people are rigging them these days is they have a slide weight with glass beads on it versus the 3-way swivel. It gives a little bit of chatter, you know, gives a little bit of sound down there. It worked. This is just not, I haven't tried it. This is a technique that works for me. Use whatever works for you, but the Carolina rig this time of year will produce. It's not something you're going to just throw every time and catch a bass. I mean, it's slow fishing this time of year, but you get quality bass on this Carolina rig. And you can fish a creature bait. You can fish a 12-inch auger tail worm. I do like to fish the big power worm down deep, in whatever color you prefer. The lake that I've been fishing, it's got about 3 foot visibility. So, you know, I get down there at 20 foot of water. I don't know if color matters too much. You just want to make sure the fish can see it. But the size, I think, is an issue, is a factor. So I like this bulky bait for bigger bass, or, you know, like a big auger tail worm, which really works. So that's the Carolina rig. And, you know, however you decide you want to rig it, there's different ways to do it, but this is the way I rig mine, and it works out pretty well. Now, where have I been fishing these lures at, depth-wise? By the way, what I didn't tell you, for my drop shot rod, this is a 7-foot medium light, 7'2" medium light St. Croix rod, 8-pound test line, medium light, fast action tip. With these thin wire hooks that I fish for the drop shot, you don't have to have too big of a backbone. You get a good hook set on those. And my Kitech rod is a medium 7'2" with a extra fast tip with 10-pound test line. So that's the way I have those set up. But moving to where I've been catching these fish at, let me get my glass on. I got a whiteboard. There's a few consistent things I can tell you, and I've got it drawn out here. So first thing I'll tell you is points have been very good, especially early in the morning. And you know, a point usually goes, you know, this is where it stops on the bank. Under the water it goes out real far. It can be out to 80, 100, 200 yards that, you know, the point goes out, and it's got drop-offs on each side of that point. And these red dots represent bass. I've caught them on top of the points in 8 to 10 foot of water, especially if there's moss in there, and I've been catching that catching them on the Kitech that way. Also drop shotting down the sides or down on top, I've been doing really well off the points. Also, if I find a good mossy area, a bank that's maybe not a point, but a big cluster of moss, and it drops off to 8, 10 foot in front of that moss, 6 to 10 actually, and these red dots representing bass, I've been throwing that Carolina, or the, not the Carolina rig, but the Kitech that's more Texas rig, and been catching them right there in front of the moss. It's been pretty consistent when they are there. They're not always there. But for the Carolina rig, I've been, if you look and find the drop-offs, and that's what I've got represented here, I've been fishing down here, and the bass have been, let me get a marker, these red dots representing bass where I've caught them, but I've also caught them down at the bottom here, you know, so I'll bounce it here. Sometimes I'll run it down that contour, and I'll follow that drop-off line with my depth finder and try to stay right on it or right on the side of it. And this is where I've been picking up the bass on the Carolina rig. I've got this little red dots here. You know, you've heard me say that, use the term bait ball. If I see a bait ball down off one of these drop-offs, you can rest assured I'm going to fish that hard. And usually what I'll see is I'll see a bait ball, but I'll also see a little V. You know, these are indicators on your depth finder of fish. And if I see that, that's bass typically, or it could be crappie. But there's a bait. If there's bait fish, there's an alpha predator fish going to eat them. So I'll slow down if I see structure down there, like a tree or something like that. I'll slow down and fish it a little slower. But bait fish are a big indicator to me where to slow down and fish more. So, I mean, you can see bait fish up here, and I've pointed that out on some of my videos if you've watched them. I say, well, here's a bait ball, and usually it's not long I'll catch a bass around that bait ball. But, you know, this is where your electronics help out, locating these shelves and these drop-offs, and that's where I've been catching fish pretty consistently. Points are just a classic way to catch bass, right? Point fishing has been around forever. You know, they hang around these points, especially on main lake points, and it's consistent on any lake that I ever fish. Points usually generate bass. And these techniques, you know, with the Kitech Easy Shiner, the swim shad, if you will, the swim bait, the drop shot, and the Carolina rig have caught quite a few fish for me over the last few weeks, now that the heat of summer is, you know, set in and the bass are down deep. So, you know, you can try these techniques if you'd like. I just thought I would share this information with you, kind of give you an idea of how I've been catching fish, and maybe you can get lucky, or, you know, get out there and try them as well and see if you can catch some. Well, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Shane Flint Outdoors. I appreciate you tuning in, and if you like this channel, please subscribe, share, and like. Hit that bell down at the bottom, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until next time, tight lines and good luck fishing.